I rang the bell beside the door of apartment 716 and waited. There was no answer. I rang again, but there was still no answer. Then I took a small, square piece of plastic out of my pocket. I looked around. I was alone. I pushed the piece of plastic into the space between the door and the door frame and moved the plastic up and down. In a minute, the door opened and I went into the flat. I stood still and listened. There was silence. I switched on the light and looked around. It was a modern apartment. I was standing in the living room. Through an open door on my left, I could see the bedroom, which was very neat and tidy. I looked in the wardrobe. It was almost empty. That's funny, I thought. People who disappear don't usually take most of their clothes with them. They only take their clothes if they have been planning their disappearance for a long time. I walked back into the living room and searched it carefully, but I found nothing to explain Ellen Garfield's disappearance. Then I went into the kitchen. The kitchen was also very clean and tidy. There were no dirty plates or cups. There was no old milk in the refrigerator. Everything was in its place. Well, I thought, there is only the bedroom left to search now. The bedroom, too. It was empty and clean. I walked quickly around the flat, making sure that I hadn't forgotten anything. I wiped everything I had touched with my handkerchief, because I didn't want to leave any fingerprints. Then I switched off the lights and opened the door to leave, but I didn't leave. There were two men standing outside the door. One of them was short and had red hair and a nasty smile. The other was quite tall and was wearing a hat pulled down over his face. The one with the hat was holding a gun, and the gun was pointing at me. I tried to close the door, but the red-haired man put his foot out to stop the door closing. I let go of the door. The door opened, and both of the men came in. The one with the hat was in front, and he was still carrying the gun. "Hold your hands up in the air," said the man with the gun. Then he turned to the red-haired man. "See if he has got a gun on him, Joe." Joe, the red-haired man, came over towards me. I waited. When Joe was between me and the man with the gun, I jumped. I jumped forward and caught Joe around the neck. I held him in front of him. The man with the gun couldn't shoot because he would hit his friend. "Right," I said to the man with the gun. "Get out of the way. I'm leaving now, and I am taking your friend with me." Holding Joe in front of me, I walked slowly towards the man with the gun. Then something went wrong with my plan. The man with the gun started to laugh. He put the gun back in his pocket and stood laughing. "Why are you laughing?" I asked. "I'm laughing because you are so stupid," the man with the gun said and walked up to me. "Stop," I said, "or else I will." "What will you do?" asked the man with the gun. "You can't do anything. I am the one with the gun." As he said this, the man leant forward. He pulled Joe out of my hands and hit me in the face. I must say that I wasn't expecting to be hit in the face. It hurt. It hurt even more when he hit me again and I fell on the floor. I lay still on the floor, hoping that the two men would go away, but they didn't go away. Instead, they picked me up and hit me hard on the head. Everything went black. I lay on the floor. I was unconscious. I woke up with a terrible pain in my head. I was laying on the floor outside the front door of Miss Ellen Garfield's apartment. I looked around. The man with the gun and his red-haired friend had left. I was alone and I had a terrible headache. I got up slowly and felt my head gently to see if there was any blood. There wasn't any blood, but my head was still very painful. I decided to go back to the office and go to bed. There was no sign of the porter at the entrance of the Manson building. I walked out of the door and crossed to the old grey Chrysler. I drove slowly back to the office. The telephone was ringing when I arrived at the office. I went in quickly and answered it. Samuel speaking. "Listen, Samuel," replied a voice. "Forget about Ellen. We hurt you a little in her apartment. If you don't forget all about Ellen Garfield, we will hurt you a lot more." "Who are you?" I asked, but there was no answer. The man had put down the telephone. I decided to do what the man had told me. I would forget all about Ellen Garfield for 10 hours. After a good night's sleep, I would look for Ellen Garfield. I would also try to find the man with the gun and his friend Joe. I lay down on the hard, low bed and went straight to sleep. I woke up the next morning at 8 o'clock. I felt my head carefully, but it did not hurt so much now. I left the office and went across the street to the cafe where I usually had breakfast. I drank a glass of orange juice, ate some fresh toast, and drank several cups of coffee. I read the morning newspapers. There was a lot of news, but nothing about Miss Ellen Garfield. I looked at my watch, left the cafe, and walked over to the Chrysler. By 9 o'clock, I was outside the title insurance building. At 3 minutes past 9, I was standing outside the door of Mayor and Mayor attorneys. At 20 past 9, I was still standing outside the door. Nobody had arrived yet to work. At 9:30, the first secretary arrived, and at 18 minutes to 10, I was sitting in Mr. Meyer's office. "Well, Mr. Meyer," I said, "my name is Samuel. I am a private detective." "I am pleased to meet you," Mr. Meyer said politely. He was about 55 years old, with a gray suit, gray hair, and a gray face. "Does Miss Ellen Garfield work here?" I asked. "Yes, she does," Mr. Meyer said. "But she hasn't been to work since last Monday. Why do you want to see Miss Ellen?" "Her sister has asked me to help find her," I replied. "Can you think of anything else Ellen said or did which could explain her disappearance?" Mr. Meyer scratched his head. "No," he said, "I'm afraid I can't help you." "Who did Ellen work with?" I asked. Mr. Meyer looked at me. "Why do you say, 'Who did Ellen work with?' and not 'Who does Ellen work with?' Ellen is not dead, is she?" he asked. "I don't know if Ellen is dead or not," I said. "Would you be very sad if she was dead?" "Yes, of course, I would be sad," Mr. Meyer replied angrily. "Are you trying to suggest that I know where Ellen is?" I smiled. "Now don't get excited, Mr. Meyer," I said. "Can you tell me the name of anyone who works with Ellen? Anyone who shares a desk with her or works in the same room?" "Yes," Mr. Meyer said. "That's easy. Ellen shares a room with Susie Graham." I got up. "I thank you very much, Mr. Meyer," I said. "Where is Susie Graham's office, please?" "It's along the corridor," said Mr. Meyer. "The third door on the left." I thanked Mr. Meyer again and walked to the door. "Oh, Mr. Samuel," Mr. Meyer said, "I'm sorry that I got angry, but you understand that I don't want—" "Yes, I understand," I interrupted. "You don't want dirty private detectives in your nice, clean office." I walked out of Mr. Meyer's office and banged the door behind me. I walked slowly down the corridor and knocked on the third door on the left. "Come in," said a voice. So I went into the room. "Are you Susie Graham?" I asked. Yes, said the girl sitting at the desk. I'm Susie. I smiled at her. Susie was the kind of girl everyone smiled at. She was small and slim and had a pair of beautiful brown eyes. What can I do to help you? Susie asked. I smiled again. I'd like to ask you some questions, Miss Graham. Don't call me Miss Graham, the girl said. You can call me Susie. Well, Susie, I said, I would like to ask you some questions about a friend of yours. Her name is Ellen Garfield. Susie stopped smiling. Yes, all right, she said, but I don't want to talk about Ellen here in the office. Right, I replied. I will tell you what we will do. We will go out and find a cafe. I will buy you a cup of coffee, and you can tell me about Ellen, all right? Susie cheered up and looked much happier. I would like to have a coffee, she said, but Mr. Meyer might get angry if I leave the office. Don't worry about Mr. Meyer, I said, with a big smile. Mr. Meyer and I are great friends. Susie put on her coat and went. Susie put on her coat and we left the office together. We found a little cafe just opposite the title insurance building. In the cafe, I told Susie why I was asking questions about Ellen Garfield. Ellen's twin sister, Helen, thinks that Ellen has disappeared, and she has asked me to find Ellen, I said. Helen told me that she came to Meyer last Tuesday. She was told that Ellen had left work suddenly last Monday afternoon. Is that right? Susie nodded. At least part of it's right, she said. Ellen was at work last Monday, and she hurried off in the middle of the afternoon. Susie stopped for a minute, and then she continued. But I don't remember seeing Ellen's sister Helen on Tuesday. In fact, I didn't even know that Ellen had a sister. Ellen's sister lives in New York, I explained. Now, you can remember last Monday afternoon. Did Ellen give any reason for leaving suddenly? Oh, yes, Susie said. Ellen said that she wasn't feeling well and was going to lie down. Did Ellen receive any visitors or phone calls last Monday afternoon? I asked. No, I don't think so, said Susie. No, wait a minute. I think yes. Ellen did receive a phone call just before she left. I smiled. I don't suppose that by chance you might have heard any of the telephone conversation? Certainly not, Susie replied. I don't listen to other people's phone calls. Can you think of any reason why Ellen disappeared? I asked. No, Susie replied. Ellen was always very friendly with everyone, and she didn't seem to have any troubles. Did Ellen have any special friends? Any man or woman she talked about a lot? I asked. No, not really, Susie replied. Ellen and I used to be quite friendly, and we went out dancing together a lot, but recently we haven't been out together at all. I understand, I said, though I really didn't understand anything at all. Can you remember the last time you went out together? Can you remember the place you went to? Oh, that's easy, Susie said quickly. We went to the Las Cabanas Club. We always went there. It was about a month ago. We had an argument there and we haven't gone out together since. What was the argument about? I asked. It was after midnight, Susie explained, and I wanted to go home, but Ellen said she wanted to stay a bit longer. She said that she had met a wonderful man and didn't want to leave. I said I was going home, and I left Ellen in the club. After that evening, one thing led to another. What do you mean? I asked. One thing led to another? Susie smiled. I often spoke to Ellen about the man she had met. Ellen thought that he was wonderful. I told her that he was no good at all. What did Ellen say when you told her that? I asked with interest. She became very angry, replied Susie. We haven't been out dancing together since then. I paid for the coffee. You have been very helpful, Susie, I said, and I have only got one more question. Can you remember the name of the man Ellen Garfield met at Las Cabanas? Benny Cribb, Susie said. That's his name. Benny Cribb. Thank you very much indeed, Susie, I said with a smile. You have been a great help. Not at all, Susie said and looked at me with her beautiful big brown eyes. If there is anything else I can do for you, just ask. I looked straight into her eyes. What are you doing tonight? I asked. I will be at home watching television, Susie replied. My boyfriend's boxer, and he's fighting in a match on television tonight. Goodbye, Susie, I said, and watched her as she walked back across the street to the Tide insurance building. Her boyfriend was a boxer. That was just my luck. So guys, هذه هي الكمالة ديال البارتي الثانية. غدا ان شاء الله ونعاود نصيفط لكم ونبارطاجي معكم البارتي الثالثة ديال هاد ليستوار هذه. لتحت في الديسكريبشن كيف العادة غادي تلقاو بعض ديال التمارين comprehension والفوكابولري اللي غادي تقدروا تستافدوا منهم بزاف. يلا بسلام عليكم حتى لغدا ان شاء الله.